and destroys everything that gets in its way.
This is Breakthrough News, and you are watching The Freedom Side. I am one of your hosts, Eugene Puryear, and I'm here, as always, alongside my intrepid co-host, Rania Khalek. Rania, great to be back alongside you.
It's good to be back on with you, Eugene.
Good, not great. I'm noting that. Nonetheless, got a
Wow.
can I say, picking up on things. Got a great show for you here today. A lot to be said, and that is pretty much par for the course for Breakthrough News. So I will remind those of you who might be watching on YouTube, this will be a great opportunity for you to go ahead and hit subscribe and then hit the bell so you can get the alerts for the things that you have subscribed to, so you don't have to look very far for the vast amount of excellent content coming out from BT News, including Dispatches with Rania Khalek, which had a great live episode, by the way, yesterday with Craig Mokiber. Very much encourage you to check that out after this show. So hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get the alerts for the things you subscribe to. And of course, if you're watching us on Free Speech TV, I just want you to keep yourself locked in on FSTV and continue to support all their content. And as always, want to give a big shout out to the FSTV team for making it possible for us to appear on that platform as well. Rania, are there other things you would like for our audience to know?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the episode I did yesterday with Craig was fantastic. Craig is one of our faves to have on and just full of so much useful analysis. So do go check that out once you're done watching this episode. But to your question, Eugene, yes, I always have a little spiel to give, and here we go. I want to remind everybody in our audience to please like, subscribe, and share this episode. Make sure you like it. Smash the like button, you guys. It helps boost us in the algorithm.
Like button.
And more importantly than all of that even is that this is an independent media outlet. We do not receive funding from corporations. That means pharmaceutical companies and weapons companies have nothing to do with this program or any other program that you're going to see on Breakthrough News. We are funded by our viewers, our audience, our supporters, people like you. So if you are able, please become a member of Breakthrough News by going to patreon.com/breakthrough news. For as little as $5 a month, you can help support independent media and help us break through the tsunami of mainstream propaganda trying to sell the world genocide, constant war, constant, trickling up of money from the rest of us to the top. So become a member, patreon.com/breakthrough news. You can access exclusive content as well as exclusive merch, and you can help keep us going and growing here at Breakthrough News. And also you can donate in the live chat if you want to do a one-time donation, or go to breakthroughnews.org and donate that way. However you can, however you're able, however little you can, it makes all the difference.
Yes. And before we get started, I also just want to remind people to go to the-encampments.com. That's the-encampments.com. The documentary done by Breakthrough Media in conjunction with Watermelon Pictures, The Encampments, which covers everything you need to know about what took place at Columbia University last year, tells the story of Mahmoud Khalil and many other students and what they did, why they did it. Also talks to students at UCLA. It talks to people in Gaza themselves about their reactions to the student protest that swept the United States, and puts it in context, breaks down a huge amount of media lies about what took place there at Columbia and the leaders who are now being targeted in such a heinous way. Theencampments.com opens nationwide Friday, April 4th. So go there. You can find out all the theaters. There's new theaters all over the country being added every single day. You can buy your tickets right there online, theencampments.com. And if you get a chance, please go rate us on Rotten Tomatoes as well, because it's fantastic.
Also, Eugene, I want to tell everybody, part of getting this movie picked up in more cities across the country and played in more theaters is for people to go see it. So it's super important to go see it because the content is fantastic. It's a phenomenal film. It's also important to help support this movement, to get this movie screened as many places as possible. Right now, we've got October 8th, this Zionist propaganda film that was executive produced by Deborah Messing, playing across the country, where billionaire Sheryl Sandberg plays a victim. And anyways, it also smears the encampments across the country. So it's really important to go show your support for the movement, for the students, for those who are being abducted by ICE right now for speaking their mind against genocide in Palestine. So I highly encourage anybody, go to the-encampments.com, find a screening nearest to you, take your family members, take your friends, go see it. And also, email AMC, email Regal, and tell them that you want to see this film in your city so that they play it at their theaters as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we're going to get this show on the road here, and we're going to turn to a very important issue in Africa, and that's U.S.-South Africa relations. As people who maybe have been following this for some time, there's been some friction since the beginning of the Trump administration with South Africa, the South African government, due to some of its own policies, and that has escalated yesterday with Trump's reciprocal tariffs, placing a 30% reciprocal tariff on South Africa, and that is separate from other tariffs that will affect South Africa, including on steel and other products. So a lot there, a lot in terms of this relationship, which has a big impact on both countries and the global economy. So we are very, very happy to be joined on the show once again by Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, who is the national spokesperson for the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, whose members are right in the center of this conversation. Pax, as always, thank you so much for being with us.
Good evening, and good evening to your listeners. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, it's always an honor to have you here on the show, and I guess good timing after Trump's quote-unquote Liberation Day yesterday. Major tariffs leveled on South Africa will certainly have a big hit, I know, in a number of different industries. I mean, give us a sense of how you all at NUMSA are looking at this, both ideological and now economic war that the U.S. seems to be levying on South Africa.
Well, NUMSA recently held its national bargaining conference from the 24th to the 26th of March, where we were already debating the possibility of tariffs. Already by then, the threat of a 25% tariff increase was already looming, because Trump was already threatening to put tariffs on South Africa. The confirmation came this week, actually. And in the conversations that emerged and the debates that emerged at the National Bargaining Conference, the first thing that, as a union, that we reflected on was the fact that we're very aware that this is because of two things. Firstly, because of a misinformation campaign led by a right-wing fringe minority organization called AfriForum. It's an organization that represents a minority of Afrikaners in South Africa. These are the people who were very aggrieved after the democratic breakthrough of 1994. These are the people who actually want apartheid to come back. They're white supremacists. They're a coke-light version of the Ku Klux Klan. That's how I'd put them, So these are people who have always been against transformation, always been against integrating into South Africa and equalizing the playing field. And it is unfortunate that, this is an organization that if through politics or through democratic elections, they would never be able to obtain any power because they really do represent a tiny minority. But because we have a Donald Trump presidency fueled by the lies of a billionaire oligarch named Elon Musk, who's also very bitter about the South African transformation, we now have this situation. Now, in the case of this tariffs that we were slapped with, a 30% tariff, South Africa is not the only country that's been slapped with punitive tariffs. It's been happening all over the world. On the African continent, there are countries that have tariffs higher than us. Lesotho, for example, I think theirs is 50%, something like that. So, really what we are experiencing, what we're witnessing is a complete upending of the traditional global world order as we know it. Trump has made it very clear that he's not interested in the status quo. He is going to do things his way. He's pushing America first, make America great again. And in his view, this tariff war is the is the way to do it. So when we were deliberating on this, we were thinking about that, but we were also thinking of the fact that, he's also has a problem with the fact that the South African government went to the ICJ. So we are being punished on two fronts. We're being punished because we're a member of the Global South, and we're being punished because the South African government took a morally correct decision to go to the International Court of Justice and lay a case against Israel for its genocide against Palestinians.
So, on that note, before these recent terrors, the Trump administration had expelled the South African ambassador over the country's pro-Palestine stance. So, I guess just to kind of go off of what you were just saying, what message do you think this sends, not just to South Africa, but to the broader global South that has supported Palestine at the ICJ?
Trump is definitely trying to scare or, force the global South or those who've taken a moral stand against Israel. He's trying to inflict fear into them so that they will capitulate and give in to their demands. Our position as a union is that the South African government did the right thing. We stand with them, we support them, we will defend them, and we will defend the decision. And as South Africans, we need to unite behind what the South African government did. First of all, we're a sovereign nation. We have the right to be friends with whoever we want to be friends with. We have the right to follow our own path of diplomacy. And yes, we're a small country, but just because we're a small country doesn't mean we should be bullied. And so,
Oh, did we lose
It
Pax?
looks like I think there's maybe like an internet hiccup.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Well, we will definitely work to bring her back here. A very important issue. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to overstep some of the points that I know she was getting ready to make there. But I mean, I'll just say this: it is amazing. I mean, she mentioned Elon Musk, which David Sachs, also of South African heritage, Peter Thiel, also of South African heritage, and it's really sort of amazing to see these like sort of apartheid remnants, if you will.
Right.
Okay, I think we have Pax back with us.
We have her back, yeah.
Perfect. Please
There she
listen.
is. Okay, where were you? Where were you? Just go ahead and take off from where you were going.
Well, I was just really saying that at the end of the day, there's an attempt to bully us. And the South African government is going to have to make a hard decision about how far do we go. Are we going to capitulate to Donald Trump's demands, or are we going to stand by our decision? Now, based on what I read this week, I read that the Department of International Relations and Cooperation actually did go to Washington this week and met with officials in Washington, where they again stated South Africa's position on the land expropriation bill, which is amongst the bills that this racist minority organization has deliberately misinformed and spread lies about, and explained that it's a bill that does not result in forced land seizure. It's a bill that is based on the Constitution, and it's only in situations where we find land that is of national interest, that land will be expropriated. But even if it is expropriated, there will be compensation. So the South African government was trying to explain that, and they stuck to their guns on the issue of Israel. They said that they make no apologies for the fact that they are defending Palestine and that they went to the ICJ. And that was, I think, a day or two before the announcement. So there are some who are interpreting that to say, yeah, South Africa, you provoked Trump, and that's why you've been slapped with 30% tariffs. But, we know that there's a broader story to this. We know that, as we know, we're not the only country that's been slapped with tariffs. Even China has got quite steep tariffs slapped on it, and the EU and other nations. But at the end of the day, we have to sit and ask ourselves, how do we move forward in this current dispensation? And that is the challenge for South Africa right now.
No, it's a very significant challenge. And, one of the things I see a lot of people talking about is what it means for both Pan-African trade and also for South-South cooperation for South Africa, because obviously there are other countries. I mean, there's also Europe too. But for instance, South Africa had the best export year ever last year for agricultural goods, and that was mainly to Africa. So I wonder how you all are seeing this issue as NUMSA about the need for or what this says, this decision by Trump and the United States, about the need for countries like South Africa to double down on sort of the existing policies of increasing trade between African countries and between global South nations.
Well, it does mean that as a country, we have to be thinking differently. And in fact, in the resolutions that emerged from this National Bargaining Conference, one of the things that NUMSA does reflect on is the fact that South Africa has to now get serious about trading with the region, trading on the continent. We have to strengthen the African Continental Trade Areas Act, I think if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but there is an overall trading agreement which the African Union endorsed a couple of years ago, and which we've not, we could have done much more about. So I think there's a lot of people, analysts who are suggesting that it is time for South Africa to be creative, to look inward, and also to look at building relations on the continent, but also to look at building and strengthening relations in BRICS. Because just because America has put tariffs doesn't mean the rest of the world has shut its doors. So it's really about us being creative. It's really about us being fearless, because this is a time when courage is required. When somebody is threatening your interests, when they're provoking you, when they're bullying you, your options are you're either going to surrender or you're going to stand up to them and fight back. So this is where we are right now. And we really hope that our leaders will take the right decision and act in the interests of the majority of South Africans and push an agenda for sovereignty and push an agenda for independence.
I'm wondering if you could speak to, because it would be wrong to have a discussion about South Africa and not mention one of the most important people actually is a South African settler called Elon Musk, who is in charge of so much U.S. policy right now. And the man he's a literal Nazi. I mean, he basically tells us he is when he does Nazi salutes, but his attitude of how he sees the world is much in that vein, talking about white genocide in South Africa. What is Elon Musk's influence over that kind of person in South Africa, over those right-wing movements in South Africa that you're having to deal with right now?
Elon Musk has a lot of influence with these organizations because they share the same philosophy. These are people who are very bitter about what happened in 1994. It is ironic because Elon Musk's family benefited hugely under apartheid. They were a very wealthy emerald mine. He went to very good schools. Well, obviously, if you were white, you had the best education.
You know what? I think it's Elon. I think it's the technological Musk gremlins messing with that.
He has the power.
You start talking about Elon Musk, I mean, seriously,
he absolutely has the power.
He owns one of the most important means of communication and news gathering and in the world. So. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
It's completely ridiculous. I think, we want to maybe get ready to move to the next story because I know we have someone waiting for us here and anyway, you'll see when I announce it. But yeah, no, I really appreciate Paxson. It's really an amazing situation. And it does speak to, the sort of moral and political role that South Africa plays, that they're being so targeted, by the United States for, for redistributing the land stolen from Native people, or even not even redistributing it, just talking about redistributing it and standing up against genocide and rallying nations all around the world. I mean, I don't know how many nations are now signed on to that case, but, a real flashpoint as it concerns the issue of Palestine and the genocide in Gaza. And on that note, Rania, we're really very honored to be able to move to our next guest, who is there in Gaza, and that is Afif Nasuli, who is a humanitarian medical worker in Gaza. Afif, thank you so much for being willing to join us here on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to make sure you guys can hear me and the electricity and the Wi-Fi is clear, because it is, touch and go with this stuff here in Gaza.
Yes, as of right now, you are coming through crystal clear.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been pretty intense in the last 24 hours, but we kind of expect it to only get worse as the pressure campaign kind of increases and Netanyahu is building corridors. So I'm just happy to be kind of connected to you guys and reaching out and talking.
No, absolutely. And in a way, it speaks to maybe where I want to start, because, you've seen it from both sides. You've seen it from the side of a lot of us who are seeing the genocide live streamed on our phones, and now you are there, you're living, you're working through it. And I just wonder that, how does that reality on the ground compare to what we're seeing on our screens? And what are some of the things that have really struck you the most since actually arriving in Gaza?
I think we all intrinsically realize that Gaza is so much more than Israel's destruction of it, and how much more Palestinians are than Israel's genociding of them. I think it's easy to tell online, but when you're here, it's extremely striking. Some doctors have worked this entire year and a half without even getting paid. They're doing it out of pure commitment and pure sort of love for Palestine. So witnessing the capacity in real time is incredible and intense and humbling. Healthcare workers can't even get food at hospitals because of the siege that's, the blockade since early March. Local workers have been abducted. The sort of intimacy with these kinds of things is extremely new for me. The capacity of this type of person, of Palestinians, is downright humbling. I can't speak more. There's not enough to say. I would say that the reality is something that I wish I could imbue in all advocates, because the stakes are so high, and it kind of shifts your perspective and increases your ability to understand what is actually going on. So I hope that answers your question.
Mm-hmm.
Afif, first of all, I hope that you're doing okay and you're safe. And I know it's an incredibly dangerous place to be. So thank you for your bravery in going there and then speaking about what you're seeing. And I do want to ask you, because you're working as an EMT in Gaza under what I would imagine are unimaginable conditions, given Israel's, systematic destruction of hospitals and clinics, and the literal intentional targeting of doctors and nurses and medics, which we saw just in the last few days. So, I'm curious if you could maybe tell us what's the state of Gaza's medical capacity right now. What kind of care are you even able to provide?
So I'm supporting GLIA, which is a medical organization, as an EMT logistics coordinator, which means I'm basically witnessing that the entire healthcare system is being held together by Palestinian and humanitarian willpower. There's got to be a lot of resourcefulness, because there are no resources. There's got to be a lot of willpower, because everything seems to be sort of we're fighting against all odds, it feels like, and with everything happening there, so much destruction of hospitals and clinics, as we've all really witnessed. We're being for doctors, I don't want to speak as a doctor. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nurse. I'm literally just supporting these people. Doctors and EMTs are being forced to make impossible decisions right now. And those include who lives and who dies, because there just isn't enough stuff here to save everyone. There's a person doing this while someone's, suffering here, and there's not enough bodies in the room to make everyone survive, and people are dying in some ways from things that they might not die of in another situation. And it's insane, because it's literally because of countries like the United States and Germany. They are just arming Israel seemingly unconditionally, and doctors wouldn't have to make these choices if they had resources. This blockade on humanitarian supplies is unconscionable. And witnessing it firsthand is, I can't explain it in any other way, that it just feels so cruel and unbelievable. So, it's Gaza's healthcare system is destroyed. It's destroyed, and people are doing what they can with what they've got. But I think that it's important to say that this is part and parcel of a genocide. When you're here, you realize there's the deliberate strategy. You do realize it from abroad for sure, but I think when you see it, you realize like that actually they don't need to kill you directly. Like that isn't, they don't need to do that. They just need to get you close enough to death and get everyone sort of in chaos and in a frantic state that it's not just bombs and bullets. It's literally preventing life-saving aid from reaching them, the people in these hospitals. And, you know, it's just really sad and hard. And it's also inspiring because with all of that, people are so incredibly thankful to God. They're so incredibly tender with one another. There is a hardness and a funniness that is just super relatable and even just sort of impressive, I have to say, about Palestinian people. So yeah, it's hard to witness that there is more to this than just bombing. It's actually a deliberate strategy that is causing havoc.
Mm. Well, it brings me to my next question, which I know is undoubtedly difficult to discuss. But what's a typical day like there? What kind of calls are you getting? Injuries are you seeing? What kinds of things are you confronting day in and day out there?
Yes, again, like I said, I want to make clear that I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nurse, and I'm supporting the staff doing logistics and documentation and coordination, which means I'm doing a bunch of different things because it's all hands on deck. I'm shadowing nurses doing their work and tracking down, making sure that they're documenting their cases so that we can really have, when things like this are going down in history, you need to be able to document them because there's a lot of, there's a lot of people who are going to spread propaganda about what's going on, and it's important to do the opposite of that and tell the truth. There's stuff like coordinating wheelchairs to kids who are missing limbs, and going into orphanages and soup kitchens and just figuring out who needs what and how, because you're getting connected to all these people through injuries of people. It's all very it's like a network that builds out, and there's not enough of your energy to do it all. So you're just doing whatever comes. One of my colleagues named Zahid Rahman, who's actually right now at the ER in, I believe, in Al-Aqsa right now, tonight, he says that his days are chaotic and frantic and that he sees a devastating amount of patients every day, from burns to gunshot wounds to shrapnel to just being in explosions. While doing that, we're hearing screams, we're hearing gunfire in the distance, we're hearing like drones. It's hard to hear now because it'll pick up in a couple of hours, but it's just a constant sort of buzzing of drones, and it's so stressful and anxiety inducing. And the capacity has absolutely collapsed. So you're just sort of doing all of these things with not enough resources while you're actively hearing murder. And I can't put it in any other way than that. You're just actively hearing violence.
I mean, that's what actively hearing murder. Jesus, the image you just painted is like insane and hard to fathom. And it kind of makes me think like if this was like World War II, it'd just be like going and doing logistics for medical aid in a death camp. And that's what Gaza has been turned into. It's just so horrific. And, one of the most horrific things that's happened that we know about, I should say, in the last week is this one by one summary execution of these Palestinian Red Crescent medics. I'm just curious, how you, and I mean, especially those you're working with, you're saying you're working with like medics and nurses and talking to doctors. So all these emergency workers that you're working with at this moment, providing logistics for, how are they dealing with that? I mean, there has been a constant attack by the Israelis throughout this genocide on hospitals, on doctors, on nurses. But this particular execution of people and then throwing them into mass graves is just so unbelievably alarming. Is there fear among medics? I mean, how are you all navigating that reality?
I think that honestly, when you're in this kind of situation, I don't feel like you get to cope at all. I feel like that's what Palestinians have been telling me all year and a half. It's like there's not enough space and time. And I think the processing comes later because it's just you're moving really fast. You're just trying to detach and be dissociative a little bit to just give yourself a little bit of space to just do the thing in front of you instead of really get to get too into your feelings right now, which I think probably isn't really great because later they'll come. But before we crossed, UN international and the UN international was killed, and there was a guest house that was bombed. So we kind of came in knowing shit was literally hitting the fan, and we would not be spared either. And not that there's any reason to believe that the Israelis are, targeting Hamas when kids are getting killed, but international people dying is also another smoking gun that whatever they're saying is just propaganda. I think it's just a matter of witnessing everyone having such a deep thankfulness to be capable and ready and willing to be here with a culture of people who are so deeply thankful and so deeply, I don't like to say any of the words that we all know and love, like resilient. They have capacity. They don't need to have this. They were not, born wanting this capacity, but they are now forced into this capacity. And there is something that rubs off on you, and maybe it won't last forever. But I have not really witnessed fear. What I have witnessed is sadness and then strength on repeat, like a cycle. Sadness about what's going on because there's a lot of sad things, and then strength. And then, the capacity to make jokes, the capacity to have joy just in the little things, like at the market, the capacity to haggle and be, intrinsically Arab and just be who we are despite all of the shit going down. I think honestly, all of the processing and fear of what's actually happening minute to minute will come, and when it will come, I will probably be very privileged because for some people that never comes. You never get the space. You just get killed.
Yeah.
I know that you've also spent time recently in Syria and Lebanon, where there's also this, significant expansion of Israeli, war in every type of way. And I guess this is maybe a tough question, but, what reflections are you taking from that? Seeing, not only the genocide up close right there in Gaza, but having been in these other parts of the region that are experiencing this similar, expansionary wave here by Israel.
Yeah, I think what I've come to really realize is that I think Israel is like a corporation. It's like a business. It's in the business of expansionism and urban development. And it uses Zionism as this corporate catchphrase or sort of corporate culture. And that is what you witness when you're in any of these countries. You're just okay, this group of this country, the state that is not defined by its religion and not defined by anything that is really about anything but business. It is a business entity trying to expand and make more money at the cost of Arab lives. And I think that is what I have gleaned, right? I have lost more and more willingness to see it any other way, whether it's in the South and Deraa, I think, was hit today. There's been just stuff in Syria. There has obviously been a corridor created in the last few days here between, cutting Rafah off and cutting the north off. There have been bombs in Beirut this week. It's just at some point you realize this aggressor in the Middle East has destabilized the region. But for Israel's existence, all of millions of people would have a lot more capacity and upward mobility and probably be a part of the world's economy in a different way. And I'm not saying that to say that there isn't some possibility in the future that something could go right and these people could be in harmony. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that's possible because it seems but for Israel's existence, all of these people around this country are being either genocided, bombed on a regular daily level, or blockaded from just regular food. Those people are then blocked off from creating beautiful structures in the world that all of us could really benefit from. And so I think it's just important to realize this is a strategy. It's deliberate. They're trying to expand. They're not going to stop. So there needs to be some other answer here. We have not done enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just to speak to what you're saying. Obviously I'm not in Gaza, but I am in the States right now. And I just, everything's so insane, and it's the source of it right now. So much of it is coming from Israel. Like, it's like I couldn't get through like an hour without Beirut got bombed. Paramedics in Gaza were murdered. Syria's getting bombed. And then people here in the States are getting abducted by ICE for speaking out against the things I just mentioned. So it's like, it's just the source of so much atrocity. And it just seems endless. And, I know you've already spoken to this, Afif, but I just want to give you an opportunity to have some last words on the fact that, despite everything, despite the apocalypse you've described, the bombardment, the starvation, the displacement, the expansionist aggression by Israel, which is now saying it's going to seize land in Gaza. People in Gaza are still trying to survive, still helping each other, still having moments of joy, still having a sense of humor. So I guess, just to leave our listeners and viewers with, what have you witnessed about the spirit and resilience of people in these conditions that the world should know?
Palestinian people are old souls. I mean, they're imbued with wisdom that we could never even, you know what I mean? Like, that is the first thing that you realize. They're strong enough to take care of each other in the worst of conditions. They're strong enough to literally try to have me over and feed me when they have no food. Like, they are literally on a regular basis. This is not one person, this is not two people. This is several people all around just being like, you are our family, come over, eat our ma'mul, come over, eat our meat. I'm like, no, are you kidding me? And they're funny, they're ribbing me, they're ribbing each other. There's always just constant comedy. I really hope that on my Instagram, I try to show these things because I think, we've done we already know what's going on. We already know there has been enough knowledge to say that no matter how much we're not doing enough. And I really hope that we can start, getting inspired by the idea that maybe we can do more to push past the envelope we thought we had, push past the thing that we thought we were capable of, and also to just share content about people not suffering in Gaza, because there is more than that here. I am experiencing more than just suffering here. I think that it's important that we know that they're suffering, but I do think we do know that. What I think we need to do is do more work about letting people live their lives as people that we can relate to and love and show up for.
Mm. Ooh, wow. Well, Afif, I have to say we're just really, really honored that you were willing to give us some of your time amidst everything going on. Afif Nessouli, thank you so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Rania. And people you can go follow Afif. He's actually regularly, every day from what I see, kind of updating with social media posts on Instagram. You can follow him at Afifness on Instagram. He's got a great account, regularly doing interviews, making videos, and showing you what's happening in Gaza. And when he's not in Gaza, he's in Lebanon. When he's not in Lebanon, he's in Syria. So just a really great, wonderful journalist to follow as he goes around to all these places Israel's destroying.
Yeah. The way you just mentioned that, it just makes you think. You look at mainstream media, television media, that all those people are making millions of dollars, and they aren't making anything like a millionth of the impact that he's making posting on Instagram about what's happening in Gaza. Margaret Brennan, from CBS, and we'll go to our next guest in just a second here, but it's the promo ad she has for her CBS show. The only scene that is from this conflict is her in Israel running into some sort of shelter. But the whole thing is about how she's like a fearless journalist who's covering everything from all sides and not, da-da-da-da. And I'm just like, wow, this is just tells you everything you really need to know. But that being said, let's keep the movement moving on here. We want to continue our discussion about the ongoing genocide and the importance of speaking out and using whatever platform you have. And I have to say, we are again deeply honored to be joined here on the show by Liam Cunningham, who's known and loved to many of us, of course, from Game of Thrones, but also a longtime advocate for Palestine and someone who's been speaking up quite a bit over the past year during this genocide. Liam, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure to join you. Thanks very much for having me.
Mm-hmm. Well, the pleasure is all ours. And I guess I just wanted to ask, and, especially in the controversy of what we've seen about the young woman from Snow White, who's being pilloried now for having spoken out about Palestine, why is it important for you to use the platform you have when obviously there are a lot of people who are pushing against that kind of content, so to speak?
Well, first of all, you use the word platform, and in my moral code, whatever you want to call that, if you do have a platform, you're obligated to use it, especially where you see injustice. And I've tried to do that all along. I've had a platform gifted to me because of the success of the show and whatever. So on Instagram and obviously Twitter. And I need to be able to look in the mirror. If I don't want to dislike myself, and if I do nothing, I will despise myself. And I've been doing it for a long time. I mean, nobody ever noticed me until the show got rather big. But I have been on these marches for, I suppose, and obviously they're a lot more prevalent now for, probably 30 years or so. And when I was with Game of Thrones, I did some work with some others in the cast during the Syrian horror. And I was in Jordan and Greece with Syrian refugees. I've done northern Uganda, South Sudan, places like that. And then, of course, this abomination blew up, as we know, and that's where we are now. I'm a big, and I despise injustice, and this is the worst injustice I've seen, I think, in my lifetime.
Mm.
Liam, I have followed you. Obviously, I was a big fan of Game of Thrones, but you've been outspoken, like you said, on these things for a very long time. And I really do appreciate that, because I know in an industry, in the entertainment industry in particular, it is quite difficult to speak out specifically on Palestine. There's so much backlash. You have a lot to lose, very little to gain. So I'm just curious if you could maybe give us an idea of your background. Like, why do you have the politics you have? Why did you grow up in an anti-war family, like a leftist family? I don't know. Tell us about that.
I grew up on. It's because I'm Irish. And we had, and this is where there's hope for the Palestinians. Let's hope it doesn't go on as long in Palestine as it did in Ireland. We had the largest empire the world has ever seen, and they're still there. They're our next door neighbors, and we had 700 years of occupation and brutalism foisted upon the indigenous Irish people. So, and we've only, we're 100 years kind of independent. So we had it like as I say, 750 years. And also, while we were occupied, 1.5 million of our population, and the estimates vary, it may be way more than that, died from famine because the British were in charge of our country. They were the occupying force. And while our population was dying, there was 50 ships a day leaving Ireland to bring food to England. And we had another 1.5 million. It's why there's so many Irish in America. It's because to escape starvation and death, people had to get out of Ireland. So for anybody in Ireland not to have a huge amount of sympathy with the predicament that our Palestinian brothers find themselves in, it would be ludicrous for Ireland, the Ireland population. The government is something different, but the Irish population are very, very much behind the struggle of the Palestinians for self-determination and justice.
Well, that's actually, I think, an important point is how do you evaluate what the government's doing? I mean, we know there's been a very strong Palestinian solidarity movement there in the streets in Ireland, very consistently raising their voice. And it seems that there's some talk from the government, but it seems like it's mainly just a little bit of rhetoric around the edges. Yeah,
it's waffle. It's basically what it is. They've just adopted on 17th of January the IHRA definition, wow, which is so surreal. Because the man, Kenneth Stern, who wrote it, said it's not to be used, as you guys know, not to be used in it. It was a working document, and he was aghast that it was being picked up. This is the man who wrote it, and I had bumped into the godlike figure of Francesca Albanese at the last march that we did last Saturday here, and she was saying, look, it's appalling, the IHRA definition, and it's the I'm sure you guys know the Jerusalem Declaration, was the declaration that she was backing regarding anti-Semitism. So I just find it astonishing. There are weapons coming through Shannon Airport, that is which makes us contribute to this genocide. There is various talk on the ground in Ireland of the possibility of a court case against our own government, as regarding complicity. So I mean, we don't know where that is. Early days on that one, but it's certainly been looked into, and we are not meeting up to our obligations with the ICJ and the ICC, to do everything in Ireland's power to, at the very least, not assist this, well, alleged, as they say, legally alleged. Everybody, the dogs in the street know it's a genocide. But there is movement here, and we also had just for your viewers and listeners, we had an appalling event taking place outside the government buildings. We have a wonderful group here called the Mothers Against Genocide, and they had a sit-down peaceful protest, and they were genuine. The people of Ireland are appalled at this. They were lifted, they were arrested, put in vans. Some of them were strip searched when they were arrested. And there's also allegedly at this time there was on one of the ladies a cavity search, and these are people who just wanted to read out a letter and sit in protest at the front gates, and they were taken up. So we do hope what's happening in Germany is not going to fester and find its way across the Irish Sea into Ireland, but the fight continues. And just one more thing: your previous wonderful speaker said. That the what's going on in the Middle East can't continue because the area deserves to succeed and flourish, and I completely agree with that. I think I'm not a cynical person. I'm optimistic about this fight, but this, as far as I'm concerned, what's happening here now in Palestine is a battle for the soul of the world. This is in my mind, and I try to separate myself in my mind. It's not about Muslims and Jews and Israelis and Palestinians. This is how we allow one group of people to treat another group of people. And all of that religious complexity needs to be removed from it and brought back to a human level. And the treatment and the disgusting behavior that the Palestinian population are subject to has got to stop, or the world goes down. If this impunity continues, it will set up a cancer around the world, and it has to stop.
I couldn't agree more. I like that. A battle for the soul of the world. It's very true. And, Liam, I want to ask you about the fact that, you do speak out. You always have. You don't seem to care what the consequences are, which is beautiful. But it's actually shocking to me that we can sit here and watch a battle for the soul of the world, the worst thing we've seen in our lifetimes, right? Just atrocity after atrocity, and so much impunity to the point where the people responsible are actually gloating about it because they know that there's no consequences. Meanwhile, the most influential people in the world, in the entertainment industry, have been silent. So it's like shocking when someone speaks out. It's like, oh my God, someone said something about the worst thing happening in the world right now. So I'm just curious if you could speak about that kind of pressure. There must be so much pressure people feel to just keep their mouths shut. Because I'm sure more people than actually speak out know that there's something horrific happening right now. You can't, it's really, really hard to ignore.
I completely agree. But somebody asked me this. It's extraordinary. Anytime I'm kind of on a chat about this, even I get the question, "Are you not worried about your career and stuff like that?" And it's the strangest thing. My kind of stock answer is, if I happen to be on some blacklist somewhere, believe me, the list that I have is a lot longer than the list that I'm on.
Beautiful.
And I have no. I have no time for that. And as somebody succinctly put it the other day, is that if, and you guys will be aware of this, but they said during World War II, the stock answer was, when asked, why didn't you do something, was, we didn't know. For a lot of people, that's a feasible answer and a believable answer. Not now. your only answer can possibly be because I didn't care. And I've said it to a couple of friends. A friend of mine as a young kid. I think he's been 9 or 10 or something, and he's one of the many people who hasn't really stood up or said really anything about it. And I said to him, what's going to happen in 10 years' time when your kid goes to college or whatever, and this thing comes up, and it will, by that time, it will be seen as everybody, as a lot of people are saying. People say, we didn't think it was a genocide or whatever. The word is going around everyone. I said to him, what are you going to say when your kid says, "What did you do? What did you do at the time?" Because the internet doesn't forget. Social media is going to be there. And how are you going to stand and look at your kid in the eye when they're doing their history lessons or whatever it may be, or their social, and go, "This is what happened here"? Because I know what I do as a teenager and a bit of a rebel or whatever. What did you do during this? You were in the middle of it, because I know what I want to do if it was happening now. And you've got to have your answers ready. And that's what I said to him. Have you got your answer prepared? Because you want to start thinking about it now. And there's a lot of people in that position. I'm astonished at the cowardice of people who won't come forward, who use it's nothing to do with me. It most definitely is something to do with you. It's to do with everybody on this planet, that this behavior is unacceptable and should be stamped on. I mean, that's the important thing, is not to lose our humanity and to keep at it. And we just got to, we have to do it. If the world implodes, we've got to, as the world implodes, we've got to still scream about it, that this is absolutely wrong and intolerable. And the other thing I'm disgusted with is the media. They are the cowardice. There's a smell of cowardice, of death and cowardice of these people that will not speak up, that ran with the lies of the beheaded babies and lies of the multiple rapes, and just dived on that and splashed it across the front of their newspapers, and have painted themselves into a corner where they don't want to deal with the fact that it was all bullshit. And that just sickens me to the core. They won't even put their hands up and say, "Look, we got this wrong. We got behind a bunch of lies." They won't, broadcast or print about the Hannibal Directive being used. I mean, the IDF figures for Gaza fighters, the IDF figures are over 1,000 IDF killed. That's their figures on October the 7th. So what happened to all the people that they were holding hostage at that time when those fighters? I mean, this is just on a mathematical level. What happened to the people that they were trying to put into vans to use as hostages to get their own hostages back? How did these die? Where were these magic bullets that only killed the Hamas, the Al-Quds fighters, or whatever it may be? It's and they're swallowing it up. The Western media is just swallowing it up, and they are complicit. They are absolutely, the editors, the sub-editors, the publishers, and the owners are complicit in this genocide, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think we are in agreement with you, and we are, again, very honored that you were willing to give us some of your time. Liam Cunningham, we appreciate all the things you're doing, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. Very nice to meet you guys, by the way. Big fans.
Absolutely. Same.
Such a pleasure. Same. What a wonderful person.
Amazing. I mean, listen, there are people who know me who are watching this who know he was my absolute favorite character on Game of Thrones.
Obviously, he was like the only good character.
And listen, it's because of him, I was also a Stannis Baratheon fan, for which I've been dragged for many different times.
What?
We'll go back and we'll address that, but I'm with the Onion Knight the whole way.
We're gonna have to
that's
have a
my guy
conversation
right
about
there.
that, Eugene. Damn.
No, amazing.
Sir
And I think the
I don't
point he
even
made
think Sir
about
Davos
Ireland is
would
so
agree with
key, and I'm glad we got that as well, because the history of solidarity between the Irish people and the Palestinian people is deep and strong, and I think important and amazing, and just so many different elements to it, and so many different things that I could say. So I'm really grateful that he was willing to come on and give us a shot here at Breakthrough News. Well, I think he left us with a good task there that helps us segue over here, which is the to continue to speak out and continue to act. And people are continuing to speak out and continuing to act around Gaza, around Palestine in general, around the attacks on those who are standing up for the Palestinian people that are happening certainly here in the United States, but quite frankly, all around the world. And to talk more about all of this, we are very, very honored to be joined by Rua Das, who is an organizer with the Palestinian Youth Movement. Rua, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, listen, the honor is all ours. And I guess I want to start with a question I think a lot of people are maybe asking. I mean, obviously, the situation is so dire right now in Gaza and across Palestine. And I think a lot of people, maybe not, I don't know a lot of people. There are many people out there who are feeling some sense of despair. Should we keep speaking out? Should we keep taking action? Why is it important that people don't just lapse into inaction in this moment, even in the midst of what is obviously a very terrible situation?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I think the answer is there is no choice but to continue to take action. There is no choice but to continue to be out in the streets every single day because the genocide has not eased up, right? We know the genocide has actually only escalated. And right now, the people of Gaza are still being bombed, are still being starved. UN schools, hospitals, tents, refugee camps are still being attacked. And this is on top of the escalating attacks in the West Bank, the attacks on Lebanon, the attacks in Yemen, the attacks in Syria, the Zionist attacks all over the region, including the Zionist attacks here in the US. And so it is important that we continue to speak up because the genocide has not stopped, and because that we know that hiding will not save us. Hiding will not save us from these the attacks, from the repression that is coming, and in fact will only make us weaker.
You know, Rua, I'm glad you brought up the repression because I think the point of repression, like we're seeing around the country, particularly with the abduction of these students like Mahmoud Khalil and others off the streets and attempted deportations of them for speaking out against genocide, a part of that repression is meant to make people scared so that they don't come out, so that they don't oppose genocide, so they don't speak out, they don't organize, they don't come out into the streets. And that is people's instinct, is to feel scared when things like this are happening. So can you speak a bit more to why it's more important than ever in the midst of this crackdown to get even louder?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the place that we must always start, that we will always continue to look to as our compass, as our guide, is the Palestinian people, is the people in Gaza. And as we just talked about, the genocide has only escalated. For over 17 months, we have witnessed the people of Gaza endure a brutal, ongoing genocide carried out by Israel with the full backing and support of the US government, right? And in the past 2 weeks alone, we have had Israel murder almost 100 people every single day, almost 100 Palestinians every single day. On Eid, children were being pulled out of the rubble wearing their brand new Eid clothes, right? And these attacks are not separate from the attacks in the US. As you mentioned, the attacks against the student movement, from Mahmoud to Badr to Rasmiya and all the other students that have been detained, kidnapped, abducted by ICE agents, taken off the streets, these attacks are meant to scare us. They are meant to get us to stop advocating, to stop organizing, to stop being out there on the streets, supporting the people of Gaza who are so steadfastly standing up and against this genocide. And we must now, just as we showed the Biden administration that it doesn't matter how long they carry out the genocide, we will not stop organizing, right? We must show the Trump administration that we will not abandon Palestine. We will never abandon Palestine, no matter what they do to us, no matter if they abduct us, if they kidnap us, if they arrest us. It doesn't matter, because the cause for Palestine is first and foremost. The cause for Palestine's liberation will always be what guides us and will always be what we sacrifice for.
I think that's such a good point. And to me, it speaks to so much of what we've seen around the world in the course of this genocide, this just massive movement that has arisen in so many different countries and just everything you can imagine, every type of person, millions of people, political crises created for everybody. Is if it didn't matter, why would they be arresting people, deporting people, doing all these things? And I know that sometimes it's hard because you feel like you want something terrible to stop. But I feel like there's a big difference between, something not achieving a goal and something not mattering. Like, we still have a lot more to do for the Palestinian people. But to say that what's happened doesn't matter doesn't seem to actually reflect how angry and upset the people doing the genocide are, that people are marching and rallying and petitioning and so on.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you have the president of the empire, right? You have the president of the most powerful military in the world targeting students that were protesting a genocide on campuses. You have him targeting negotiators for divestment on university campuses. You have him targeting students that wrote op-eds in the school newspaper. I mean, that is how powerful our movement is. That is how effective the movement for Palestine liberation in North America has been. And this is absolutely an attempt to liquidate the movement. An attempt, however, that will not work, because again, the people have shown that they are with Palestine. The students, the community members, people of conscience all over the world have shown that they are with Palestine, and they will do whatever it takes to continue to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people and to organize against this genocide.
Well, with all that in mind, there is a massive rally taking place this Saturday, April 5th, in Washington, D.C. Can you tell us why this is a particularly, I mean, they're all important, these rallies, but what is so important about this one on April 5th?
I mean, on April 5th, thousands of people around the country will be going to Washington, D.C. to demand an arms embargo, to demand an immediate end to the genocide, and to demand an immediate end to the repression against the students and against the Palestine movement in North America. This march, this protest, is one of the most important ones that we have done in the past 2 years. This protest, with the restarting, the resumption of the genocide, with the ethnic cleansing plans that Trump alongside the US are drawing up for Gaza to displace the people of Gaza, with the attacks in the West Bank, with the attacks on the student movement and the Palestine movement here, this march is our opportunity to show Trump, to show Netanyahu, to show Zionists, the Zionist entity and Zionist institutions everywhere, that the people will not stop. The people will not stop. You will not tire us out. The Palestine movement, the Palestinian people have survived 100 years of occupation, right? 77 years of colonization. In the US, the Palestine movement has survived arrests, has survived attacks, has survived infiltration, abduction, all of these tactics that they have taken, all these measures that they have taken in order to try to stop our movement. Now is the time for us to stand up and show them that it will not work. They can keep trying, but it will not work. And it will not work because, again, we are determined. We will continue to fight for the liberation of Palestine.
No, I think that's such a great point. I mean, every movement that's ever succeeded has been brutally suppressed. I mean, and repressed, but nonetheless, it has still succeeded. And I think that's something we have to keep, track of. And one thing I want to also ask you about this is I know one of the elements of this is to march directly to ICE, which I think is drawing a number of issues together. Why is that specific target so important? I mean, maybe it's obvious to many people who know what's going on, but I think it's worth saying here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think ICE and deportations right now are the Trump administration's primary tactic to repress the Palestine movement and to repress the student movement. And so we are marching to ICE again to show that we are not scared. We are not scared, and we will continue to stand up. And in fact, that these deportations and these scare tactics have only further motivated us and further motivated the Palestine movement to continue to organize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think that's like a crucial new element to all of this because we're in an era where everything's more intense. And, you're a Palestine youth movement, which has also kind of been in the crosshairs. It's been attacked by name many times. So I'm just curious, how do you speak to those who maybe feel like they're in more vulnerable positions? I mean, the reality is that people who are not American citizens in this moment do feel fearful because of what they're seeing happen with visa revocations, with green card holders being sought after. And I'm personally not sure what to tell people. Like, I have friends who are like, well, I'm not a citizen yet. Like, I'm in the process, so I'm scared to go to protest. How do you speak to, or what are your words of wisdom for people who feel like they're in vulnerable situations when it comes to speaking out on this issue?
What I would say is that I think everyone has a place in the movement. There is a way for every single person to contribute. No matter what their risk level is, no matter what their positionality is, no matter what their job is, what their age is, there is a way to contribute. And so find that way to contribute and do that. And for those that are able to come out on the streets, now is the time to do so. And I encourage you, I ask you to join us, to join the dozens of organizations and the hundreds of endorsers to get on a bus from the dozens of cities that are sending buses to this march to join us on the streets on Saturday, April 5th.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will certainly be reporting it, and we will be covering it live and seeing what happens, and we'll be discussing the aftermath. And most certainly, I'm sure the Palestinian youth movement will continue to give us great orientation and analysis as we move forward. Ruat Das with the Palestinian youth movement, thank you so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Rania?
Yes, Eugene, I will actually be there in person on Saturday. I believe you will be as well. I will be covering the rally for Breakthrough News. So I will see you there. To those who are coming and to those who want to come. Be there in DC if you can. I know there's some people who might be scared because of their situation, which means those who don't have a reason to be as fearful, aren't in those vulnerable situations, should step up even harder.
Yes, I agree. I mean, one thing I hope people thinking about that, they should check out and remember the history of the sanctuary movement in the 1980s against the attacks on the those who were fighting for freedom for El Salvador, and they were trying to kick people out of the country. People had to hide in churches, but millions of people came together to defend their right to stay, to not be sent back, and in many cases, they undoubtedly would be assassinated because human rights defenders were being massively assassinated. I mean, even a group of American nuns were assassinated by the right-wing government of El Salvador there, and it became a huge touchstone all across the country that just millions of people were standing in solidarity with those who were standing up for freedom and justice in their home country and against the dirty war that was happening in El Salvador and Nicaragua and in a related way in Guatemala and Honduras as well, where we've things that people forget about in some ways in the history of the United States, but the genocide committed in Guatemala, for instance, against the indigenous people by Rios Montt, who is of course 100% backed by the United States. And of course, you know who is supporting all those regimes, Rania? Israel.
Israel.
100, they were the only
Right.
people, no matter if you were genociding people, if you were the most rogue, worst person on earth, and like nobody would sell you anything, like even when the Shah of Iran would not sell you something, Israel would come in and sell you weapons, sell you technology, whatever they could do. So all of these military governments, dictatorships in Latin America, heavily armed, the apartheid government of South Africa, the apartheid government of quote unquote Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, same thing. I mean, I could go on and on and on in terms of the role they played that was so pernicious all across Africa in many places, and the role that they continue to play that's so pernicious all across Africa to this day, in Uganda and Ethiopia and many other countries where they've cultivated this support system for their terrible ideas and ideologies. But I don't want to go on and on about that. We can talk more about it later. Let's move on to our next guest, who we are honored to have back on the show, and that is Lee Camp, who, by the way, has a great new comedy news show, Unredacted Tonight, that is out. It's actually coming on a little bit later today, so great to have you here in advance. Lee, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thanks a lot for having me, Eugene. Rania, pleasure to be here. Pleasure to see you. And your last guest was spitting fire. Don't put me on after that. That was too good. That was. I want someone with a lot of ums and ahs right before I go on.
All right. Take Lee off. Let's get a crap guest in so that he feels better.
Thank you.
Listen, we did set you up. I can't lie. We did set you up. But nonetheless, very happy to have you with us here. And I want to talk about the show in just a bit as well. But before we get into that, you've been making some excellent points that I'm hoping you could talk a little bit about is the context of this crackdown that we are seeing on dissent, on free speech, on Palestinian solidarity is all happening under the umbrella of anti-Semitism. We're doing everything possible to protect Jewish people and to fight against anti-Semitism, which of course is a pernicious form of racism. I guess I just wonder how that strikes you, because it really is, to me, one of the most kind of insidious aspects of how the Trump administration is selling this.
Yeah, it's breathtakingly revolting, of course, to see any criticism of Israel, any criticism of genocide called anti-Semitism. But also, as a Jew, and I know I have one of those names where people go, wait, Camp can't be Jew, but yes, I am a Jew. But as a Jew, it destroys the actual concept of anti-Semitism. There is real anti-Semitism in the world. And when you, and you meaning Israel and everyone who's going along with this, but when you take that term and use it to apply to anyone who stands up against this genocide, stands up against Israel, stands up against ethnic cleansing, stands up against apartheid state, stands up against all these things, all these horrific things, if you say, oh, that's anti-Semitism, well, now the word essentially has no meaning. You've utterly destroyed what that word means, how it's used, when it could actually be used to criticize something, say that person is anti-Semitic. It has very little meaning thanks to Israel, and thanks to how hard, here's the other part of it, how hard Israel has worked with the propaganda to make people think that anything anti-Israel is thereby anti-Jewish, and also that Israel speaks for all Jews. Both those things are utterly ridiculous, but they've worked very hard to get people to believe that. And so now you have people going, oh, well, anything Israel does is supported by all Jews around the world. And that is utterly ridiculous as well. There are millions upon millions of anti-Zionist Jews like myself. There are more Zionist Christians in just America than there are Jews in the world. So the numbers don't add up at all in that regard. But Israel has worked very hard to put us in this position where anti-Semitism, the term, is becoming meaningless because they want to crush any criticism of that country.
And speaking of this settler colony called Israel, Lee, there was this anti-Semitism conference that they had like last week. And it was a huge embarrassment because of the fact that there was all these far-right figures there, including Nazis, which is quite embarrassing. But it speaks to the moment we're in, right, where Nazis have wrapped themselves in the flag of fighting anti-Semitism. They literally are being Nazis under the cover of protecting Jews. Like, you can't make that up. Like, you know what it's like, it's just like, It's like the irony in that is so insane. But that's what you have today. You have the sort of like offspring, ideological offspring of the perpetrators of the Holocaust, because we have actual modern day Nazis, neo-Nazis, and they are attacking, well, they're supporting a genocide against Palestinians, attacking Arabs in the West, brown people in the West, justifying like deporting people in the most heinous ways, justifying abducting them off the streets and putting them into these ICE torture facilities, all in the name of protecting Jews. So could you just speak to the fact that that's just the most insane thing ever?
Yeah, the alliance between Israel and Nazis or neo-Nazis is truly horrific, and it shows how inside out everything has become and how Israel does not speak for Jews. I think it really is a glaring example of that. You talked about how Nazis are, wrapping themselves around this cause. Well, the reverse is true as well. Israel is giving giant bear hugs to Nazis, and they're groups like the Anti-Defamation League, which is, supposedly supposed to search for hate and anti-Semitism, but of course they're just there to support Israel. You've got them defending, Elon Musk doing a Sig Heil on stage. They're defending literal Nazi salutes and Nazi emblems. Meanwhile, they spin around and say any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. It is all completely inside out. It's inside out morally. And I think everyone should be outraged. You should be furious, or you're not paying attention. The great expression, it is no sign of health to be well adapted to a profoundly sick society. So if you're feeling good right now, that things are going all right, then you are very well adapted to a profoundly sick society.
I couldn't put it better myself. And it brings me to another point here, too, that I think is maybe has been clarified for people. But, given the campaign last year, the presidential campaign, and, Trump's attempts to, I think, manipulate people who do want to see a pullback in U.S. imperial wars abroad. They want to see an end to this military-industrial complex, that he was some sort of peace and anti-war candidate that was going to, be the dove of flying around the world. It feels totally exposed now, Lee, and it feels that anyone still trying to truck with that is just lost the plot.
Yeah, they're trying to take a few examples of where Trump is less belligerent than the Biden administration, such as the proxy war in Ukraine or his initial momentary attempt to end the never-ending war with North Korea. They want to take examples like that and say, oh, he's a peace president. This is the guy who his Pentagon dropped 44,000 bombs his first year in office. Obama's final year in office, they dropped 26,000 bombs. These are two pro-war parties, pro-destruction parties, pro-genocide, really, parties. And there are some examples where Trump is less belligerent than the Biden administration. That does not mean he's anti-war. It does not mean he's going to stop all wars. He's going to stop the genocide in Gaza. He's going to stop genocide in Yemen. No, he is equally war-minded, bloodthirsty. It's just he has slightly different views on things here or there. But anybody who's calling him anti-war, they're just completely laughing at the facts, laughing at what we saw during his first 4 terms. I mean, when he assassinated Iran's top general, it could have sunk us all into nuclear war or some kind of horrific war. So, he has put us on the brink of Armageddon as much as the Biden administration has, but maybe in slightly different. It's a slightly different flavor of bloodthirsty maniac.
I would also want to ask you, Lee, in the context of all this censorship and repression people are facing, you are someone who's faced your fair share of censorship as a journalist. What advice do you have for activists, comedians, journalists who are speaking out right now? And how do you think we should be pushing back against this kind of like manufactured moral panic while staying rooted in very important solidarity with Palestinian liberation?
I think it was Bruce Lee said, you got to be like water. You got to, you got to move.
I didn't see that one coming.
Around. around all the obstacles, you just create all the platforms and go to the ones that are working. I've been banned from my old channel, banned from YouTube, banned from Spotify, banned from TikTok. And you just got to keep finding those outlets, keep moving. In many ways, to stop this genocide, or in many of the other anti-war efforts, we're going up against one of the most powerful forces humanity has ever seen, which is the U.S. Inverted totalitarian system. And so, no one should think it's going to be easy. No one should think it's going to be quick. This is a long-term fight. We're in a marathon to try and bring peace and some sort of moral understanding back to this world. And you just have to keep trying different tactics, different things. I was very active in Occupy, but that doesn't mean that's the tactic to use forevermore. Occupy worked. It was a tool, and it worked for a few months. And sure enough, the ruling elite found ways to crush that. So you got to find new tools. You got to always be changing, always shape-shifting, as it were.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of, former intelligence officials, maybe some current ones, that thought they could shut you up. And, they are unfortunately going to have to be drinking their own tears. Redacted Tonight was such an amazing show. I think so many of us, I actually still have a coffee mug from Redacted Tonight.
I do too.
And so I definitely do. Look, I'm a real Lee Camp fan. People don't believe me, but it's true. I'm not just saying it. I really am. But you're back with Unredacted tonight. You're back on the set, back on the scene, a lot going on. Tell us about the show and tell us about, the next episode, what you're going to have coming up and where we can find it.
Thank you guys so much. And of course, I love all of your work. So thanks for being a lodestar to so many people. I recreated, it took me 3 years, but I recreated it. I recreated Redacted Tonight as an independent version. I'm calling it Unredacted Tonight. But luckily, it still has the same host, the same team of writers, the same producers, all being me. So it has the same voice. And I would love for people to check it out. We're on episode 7. We've been going 7 weeks now. Episode 7 premieres tonight. And tonight, the main topic will be the mountains, and I do mean mountains, of evidence. And I'm sure you guys have talked about this, that Israel knew exactly what was going to happen on October 7th. Even the New York Times and others have done some small bits of coverage here and there about it. So that will be one of the main topics, but there's many other topics I'm covering as well, such as the FBI now acting as basically rent-a-cops for the nation's CEOs. And, it's comedy news, but it hits some important topics. So some people call it The Daily Show with sharper teeth. And I would love for people to check it out. The easiest place is leecamp.com/unredacted. That's the whole playlist of all the episodes.
Well, I would say sharper teeth and a lot more intelligence. No disrespect to The Daily Show, but that's my feeling. I really just hope everybody checks out episode 7 tonight, unredactedtonight.com. Do whatever you can to watch this show and tell people about it so we can promote it. Lee, it's always a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you both so much. It's a pleasure to see your faces.
Mm-hmm. Rania?
Oh, that's a nice thing to say.
It is. Great person. Excellent person. Great work. Really, truly, I really want people to support this show. Like, definitely Lee is somebody who, there's a reason why he was someone who was targeted, he does a great job breaking things down and explaining it. It's like something you can show a non-political or someone who's not following the news, and it's not jargony. It's not, you know what I'm saying? People can follow it. And I think that's so important to reach the people who need to be reached, to continue to keep pushing out, to continue to have a ripple effect in the population. And I just think he's really such an important voice with that kind of presentation. And we need more of that.
Oh, absolutely. And also, I know I usually wait to the very end to say this, but I just want to point out, Eugene, we're like 14,000 followers on YouTube away from 1 million subscribers.
Ooh. Wow.
Isn't that wild? That's like crazy.
It's hard to wrap your mind around in a way.
Yeah, like so when I started at Breakthrough a year after Breakthrough started. You guys started obviously there was no Rania. Yeah. But I came on delayed, but finally. But no, Breakthrough started in 2020. Mm-hmm. I came on in 2021. And I think when I came on, I think it was just 9,000 followers, which is a good amount to build on YouTube. But man, so that's 2020. That's 5 years to 1 million subscribers. That's amazing. That speaks to a lot of like hard, amazing work. And now we have so many programs and just like bringing you guys so much. And I'm excited to like be expanding. We have our first feature film, which is playing in theaters, which
some
is
might say the hottest
huge.
documentary in the country.
I would say the hottest documentary in the country, and anybody who disagrees with me is canceled.
Yeah.
But also go find out for yourself by going to one of those screenings, the/encampments.com. Sorry, not to be confused with the slash, a dash, like a hyphen. Thank you, encampments.com. But I mean, it's really exciting. And we should do something exciting when we get to 1 million. I think we will. We've been talking about it. But you're never going to know until we get to that million. So, tell your friends, tell your family who isn't already following Breakthrough News, because I don't know why, that they should be, so we can hit that million mark.
Indeed. Now's the time, critically important time. And I'll say the other thing about the encampments that I do just want to say, I mean, obviously, we're Breakthrough News, so of course we're going to promote our own work. But I think in this moment where there's so much slander around what took place in those encampments, when Mahmoud Khalil is still in prison, when many of these students are facing significant disciplinary actions or have already, had significant disciplinary actions, some of them are still facing legal action, all these different sort of factors. I mean, I know some of the student groups, I believe, today were banned from some of the Meta platforms. This is the story. This is the real story of what took place. No one had more footage than we did. No one was there longer than we were, other than the people themselves. And I think that, we were able to capture in an important way what it meant. And I think, we also were able to talk to people in Palestine, and you see that Bisan, and many people know, the journalist, about what was the impact of this movement for the people in Gaza. So, I mean, there's so many important factors, but it's not just about the tickets, not just about the money. It's not just about us having a hot movie. Like, in this political moment, going to see this movie and promoting it is a part of the broader struggle that's happening in this country about whether or not people are going to be able to say what's on their mind about critically important issues and to push to try to change the policies of this country that are so detrimental to so many people in this country and abroad.
Absolutely. And I mean, I really encourage people, go see it more than once. Also, there's something special about that theater experience. I'm excited to watch it in theaters. I went to a media screening, so it was like media.
Yeah, I went to a regular screening. I'm just the hoi polloi. I'm the rank and file. You know what I'm saying? I'm just the working class out here.
Or you just weren't in New York during the media screening.
You don't know that.
I was.
You don't know that.
I actually do know that, unless you were lying to me and everybody else that
you don't have my location. You don't know that.
Wow, that's true. That's true. I thought I could trust you, but now
I didn't drop a pen.
All that's to say, there's something I'm going to see it with my family on Sunday, so I'm very excited to get that like theater experience of this film, because I've also had the opportunity to see it just on my laptop. And then I've had the opportunity to see it at a media screening, so now I get to see it with people. And there's something collective about that. There's something collective about being out with people. They're coming to see this movie too, to get informed. They already probably know about Palestine. Maybe some of them don't. Maybe they're just learning about it. I hope that's the case too. But either way, you're going to be in a theater full of a lot of people that feel the way you feel about this horrific genocide. Mm-hmm. So it's like an experience that is moving and important and empowering, to go have that sort of movie theater collective feeling with other people as you're seeing what happened at these encampments and what it meant.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Rania, that's the end of our guest. I don't know if there's anything else you feel we should touch in terms of things happening in the world.
There is actually. I want to come back to the issue of this Saturday, April 5th, which there's this huge rally. You're going to be there. I'm going to be there covering it for Breakthrough News. So you can also watch the live stream if you're not able to be in DC. But I highly encourage, if you are, that you go to this rally. We need to be in the streets. People need to show this administration and the world that there is opposition to this genocide and to what ICE is doing across this country right now, to those who are speaking out against genocide, and just to those generally who happen to be immigrants. But all that's to say, Eugene, I wanted to know if maybe you could speak to two things. One, the fact that there is this social media trend that's so bizarre. It keeps being in my For You page, which makes you suspicious of it. But I keep seeing these tweets online being like, don't go to the march. Marching is stupid. It's futile. Why are these activists wasting our time? trying to do it almost from like a pro-Palestine perspective, which makes zero sense to me. But I guess we have to, I mean, if people are saying it and it's getting traction, perhaps we should address that. And then there's this other side of things, which is saying Black people in particular should stay home. I don't know if you could maybe address those two things.
I guess I can. I mean, I'll do the best I can. I mean, look, you know, there's sort of two pieces to this. I mean, there's the piece that you mentioned, which is sort of about the tactics of something, and then there's also the piece specifically about the African American community and the Black liberation movement in its own tradition. You know, the issue of tactics. I mean, listen. You have to consult history. I mean, that's the nature of things. And the reality is a lot of the conversation around tactics is like, well, you know, listen, we've been marching, and if you've been marching and it hasn't stopped the genocide, why would you march again? Because it's not succeeding. As if the mark of why you should do something, if it's the right thing to do, is whether or not you succeed. I mean, it's worth noting, if we want to actually talk, as we're talking about the tradition of the Black liberation movement, every single slave revolt failed in the United States. The only one that really succeeded was the Civil War, which was its own different type of slave revolt. But, you know, Gabriel Prosser didn't succeed. Denmark Vesey, they couldn't even get it off the ground. Nat Turner also did not succeed. I could go on and on. The German Coast Rebellion. But should they not have done it? Should slaves not have continued to resist their enslavement? Should they have not continued to rise up against all odds, many times knowing they very likely could fail? And actually, the consequences of those failures were significant, because after every failed slave revolt, there were massive waves of repression where people were mass murdered, essentially. I mean, they were using the legal system, but essentially mass murdered in many different ways, where the laws were tightened significantly around slavery and the rights of slaves. But no one looks back at that and says, oh, wow, how dumb they were, because they just kept doing the same thing and it never changed anything. Because eventually it did change something. Because slaves continuing to say that slavery is a degradation of their humanity and that they would not stand for it made a huge difference in changing the possibility and the reality of what was happening in the country. And by the way, the abolitionist movement at the same time was constantly petitioning. You know, the petitioning Congress, please, Congress, take this up. Please, Congress, do this, do that. They were voting for political candidates saying, get in there and try to end slavery. And for a long time, it did not end slavery. It did not work. I mean, the Montgomery bus boycott was 1955. The Civil Rights Act was not 1964. Should people have said, well, look, it's 1960, dog. Why would we have a freedom ride? Because they already did some in Montgomery and segregation isn't over. So why would we sit down at a lunch counter? Why should we do any of that? You know, I mean, it really, you have to look at history. That the reality is that just saying that you've done something again and again and again and it hasn't gotten you the goal, that means that tactic is somehow not appropriate, doesn't make any sense at all in terms of history, in terms of reality. All movements use many types of tactics, and 9 times out of 10, it takes a very long amount of time for those various tactics to crystallize into a victory. So that is, I think, an important factor in terms of what we understand. We have to look at the relationship of forces of where we are right now in this country and what it does mean to stand up. And, you know, the second piece of it, you know, and I don't even listen. This whole trend online, I don't even believe this is real. This is an operation. This Black people should stay home on April 5th. And that is actually less about Palestine. That's actually more directed towards these anti-Trump protests that are also happening now, which also I think are very important. And I think we should try to find a way to bring that energy together, because it's the same people doing all these different things. And this I don't understand. I mean, you know, and when you look at this, and we, by the way, been doing some research on this today in Breakthrough News. I just want y'all to know. And what you'll note about a lot of these accounts is in the past several weeks, they've done a number of videos about Black radicals who actually did always stand up, did always march, did always step out, and did do a lot of things. So it makes you wonder who they were trying to attract, just to then be able to drop on them, oh, you shouldn't go out against Trump, oh, you shouldn't go out for Palestine. Again, I think we should be a little suspicious of that, especially based on what we know about COINTELPRO in this country, especially based on what we know about how the Jim Crow establishment in the South manipulated Black professionals, particularly teachers, by the way, and administrators, in order to try to stop the civil rights movement. We should wonder why all of a sudden accounts that, you know, a few weeks ago said we love the Black Panthers are now saying don't go out on April 5th. The reality is this, you know, everything bad in this country is disproportionately Black, whether we're talking about poverty, homelessness, deaths from diabetes, deaths from cancer, deaths from kidney disease. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. If it's bad, it's disproportionately Black. Just guaranteed. You don't even have to ask. Unemployment, that's another one. You could go on and on. Trump's agenda is 100% designed to make this significantly worse. They're trying to get rid of Medicaid. That means more of our people are going to ultimately die. They're trying to cut rental assistance. That means more of our people are ultimately going to be on the street and potentially dying. They're trying to find a way to cut Social Security, which means more of our seniors are going to not have enough food to eat. People will be eating cat food in public housing that's falling around them because they're also cutting the funds for the repairs to public housing. So our people are 100% in the crosshairs of Trump. And not only are they under 100% in the crosshairs of Trump, they're now saying that you can't even teach about racism in this country. I mean, you had the woman, Linda McMahon, at the hearing about Secretary of Education, and they said, can you assure us that having Black History Month at your school will not violate the Trump ban on DEI? And she said, I'm gonna have to look that up. Look it up. You can't even teach Black history. So everything that is bad is disproportionately Black, but you better not talk about it. And if you do, we're going to pull the funding from your schools, from your colleges, from corporations, from anyone who's trying to say, why is it that Black people are in this disproportionate situation on every negative issue? And why is it that we can't do something about that? Well, now you can't talk about it. So not only are they making it worse, but they're trying to make people ignorant about why it's happening in the first place. So ultimately, this is why Frederick Douglass said it. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. And I want to read the whole quote, Rania, because I think it's important to these people who are saying this online. Wonder who they really are. Maybe it's a AI, but let's just go on. Frederick Douglass.
Right.
If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one. And it may be a moral and a physical one, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. So if you got Trump talking about, I'm coming out here trying to destroy every single program in this country that helps Black people. Again, trying to destroy every single program in this country that helps Black people. Trying to destroy every single program that helps Black working class people. Trying to do everything possible to make the life of Black seniors even worse. And to try to erase the history of racism, white supremacy, and injustice from this country in every possible way. And you say you should stay home. I'm just telling you right now, you are Uncle Tom. You just like the people who told on the slave revolts. You are. You are. And you bet, and to have a video talking about you were for the Black Panthers? One of these videos, you know, the Sean Blackman who works us here at Breakthrough News told me this earlier because he looked it up. People making videos about Queen Mother Moore, one of the greatest strugglers in the history of Black America, saying Black people shouldn't come out and stand up to Trump, and then having the nerve to say, as my friend Kay Pritzker, who's on this show, who posted a video by a friend of ours, a Black woman, pushing back against this. Someone said we could come out and we could die. Yo, we been dying. We the number one people dying out here. We the number one people who gonna die from Trump. So what's the difference? We dying one way or the other. So you might as well die, as Claude McKay famously said, fighting back, not like hogs to the slaughter. So that's my message to those people, and my message to people who say, let's not march. Look at history. Just because a tactic isn't getting you what you want with immediate returns doesn't mean that it doesn't work. We have to make a concrete analysis of concrete conditions and put together the tactics and the strategies that will succeed. And by the way, most of the people who are saying don't march have no other ideas. So, you know, they're saying people should do X, Y, and Z. Well, if people should march and they should be doing X, Y, and Z, you do X, Y, and Z. Don't get mad at other people who are saying march. You do something. You step out there. That's our tradition of Black people in this country from the very first moment they ripped us off the shores of Africa, when we were fighting back in the so-called slave factories, in the slave ships, on the Middle Passage, when we got to the damn plantation in the first place. So this whole operation, I'm very suspicious of it. I'm very suspicious of it. I'll just go out and say, call me tinfoil hat. This is COINTELPRO. It's not real. This is people who want Black people to be lined up and killed and pushed out and marginalized and oppressed even worse than they were. And the final thing I just want to say about this. People say, well, what did the Palestinians ever do for us? Stand up to for us every single time we stood up. Why did Malcolm X go to Gaza? You better than Malcolm X? Why did SNCC stand up in 1967 and say we support the Palestinians even though it meant they lost all their funding, money, and mainstream support? You better than them? Why did Jesse Jackson make it one of the biggest points of his entire career in the 70s and the 80s, even in the 2000s? I actually once remember being at the CBC convention and when Gilad Shalit was out there and Reverend Jackson said, everybody's here talking about, you know, the hostage that they're holding. What about the 10,000 hostages that the Israelis are holding? Let's release them and then we can talk. The tradition of black people is always to stand. In Ferguson, when the tear gas came through, it wasn't white liberals. It wasn't Democrats saying, here's how you fight the tear gas. It was Palestinians. So realistically, there's probably no other ethnic group that has been more supportive of black people in the United States than Palestinians. Like, that's just real talk. So at the end of the day, all of this is fake. It's all designed to keep you inert, to keep you chained to inaction, to keep you looking at meaningless influencers on your phone. Why is every gambling ad black celebrities? Why is every drinking thing now black people in here with alcohol and all this other stuff? It's not by accident. It's not by accident that Kevin Hart is selling you gambling and liquor. It's not by accident. So we have to ask ourselves why there's all this effort to keep us from going out and protesting to save our own lives and to keep us locked into a consumer system that's killing us every single day. It's all coming together. So I'm saying too much. Let me just go ahead and stop.
No. I mean, I preach away. That I think that needed to be said is very powerful, and I hope that puts it to rest.
Thank you.
And if it hasn't, then goodbye.
Yeah, and then you know it's really an op because it just keeps going.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Eugene, I want to, before we actually wrap, I just want to remind people that this is an independent media program. We are able to function with your support, able to go and grow with your support. So please do, if you haven't already, go to patreon.com/breakthrough news. For as little as $5 a month, you can access exclusive merch as well as exclusive content. And more importantly, you can help make Breakthrough News bigger and better.
Well, I couldn't say it any better than that. Thank you so much to all of our guests today. Thank you so much to all of you who watch. Shout out to all of our existing patrons. We'll continue going and growing with your help. Look at that. I even took Rania's tagline. Nonetheless, definitely please check out Rania's interview from yesterday with Craig Mokhyber. Look out for the live stream of the April 5th demonstration that's going to be happening this upcoming Saturday in solidarity with Palestine and the students who are being abducted off the streets. For myself, for Rania, for the whole Breakthrough News team, we will see you next time.